Hi, good afternoon from the West Coast. Today is Tuesday, or Monday rather, May 7th, 2018. I'm Dr. Alexandra Katehakis, founder and clinical director of the Center for Healthy Sex here in Los Angeles. And I want to welcome you to our monthly webinar. I encourage you to ask questions as always and share your thoughts as well. If you want to type in something on the chat bar on the side of the screen, you can do that and I can read it readily. If you want to send a private message so that no one knows your name or what you're asking, or just your name or your identity, you can write directly to morgan@centerforhealthysex.com. So without any further instructions, I just want to start by reminding you to think about the question, what do you rely on most in your life? What do you rely on most? What do you rely on most for your confidence, for your sort of general well-being? Because we are going to talk today about confidence. And today's quote is, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." And that's a very, I think, powerful and evocative statement, because this notion of belonging to oneself, or to loving oneself, or to living in one's own loving it really speaks to things on a multiple level. First of all, it speaks to confidence, but it also speaks to what we call neural integration, where the brain and the body and the mind are all functioning as one, so that confidence is a solid sense of self. And, when I say solid, I'm pointing to my chest, because we feel that solidity sort of in the core of our being when we really feel confident. And so ask yourself, do I feel like I belong to myself, or does my sense of self slip and slide depending on whose presence I'm in, which is a little bit different than being impressionable or gullible. I, believe it or not, tend to be impressionable. If somebody tells me something with conviction, I sort of want to believe that. But I always have to check back with myself to see if it's really true for me. Does it really resonate for me? And self-confidence evolves from self-compassion. In the field of psychology, we used to talk a lot about self-esteem. And less are we talking about self-esteem, and more we're talking about self-compassion. And liberation comes in many different forms, one of which is self-confidence, that security in your own abilities, in your own qualities, in your own accomplishments, allows you to feel solid internally. So for example, if you're a perfectionist and you've never quite done anything, it's not good enough, or it could be better, or I wish I'd done it that way, you're always lamenting what could have been, and you're not in gratitude or recognition for what you did do. And to be compassionate with yourself and to say, you know what, maybe it wasn't my 100% best job, but I did a pretty good job at that, and I know I can do better, or I want to. But I was sick, or I was stressed, or I didn't have enough time, or I didn't leave enough time, which is my fault. But I still want to have compassion for myself for doing the job that I did do, and being in gratitude for what I did accomplish, as opposed to trashing myself or hammering myself for not doing it good enough. So self-compassion really goes hand in hand with compassion, and I want you to think about that also. Feeling the freedom to take risks for your most daring dreams certainly requires confidence in yourself. And that self-confidence grows out of self-compassion. So I'm always reminded of the famous Thoreau quote, where he said, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you imagine." So what is the life that you imagine? And are you daring confidently to go in the direction of that? And it's hard on most days. It just feels like, you're doing the day-to-day grunt work, the chopping wood, carry water, the answering emails, or, kind of slogging through a workday where maybe it doesn't feel like anything's getting done, but you are doing the little things that require you to realize your dream. So when you have self-compassion, rather than looking back on the day and saying, well, that was a dumb day, or I didn't get anything done, seeing what one thing you did get done, what did you win, what did you accomplish, and giving yourself a pat on the back for that, not in a grandiose or narcissistic way, like I'm so terrific, I don't have to do any work, but in a self-compassionate way that says, I did a good job today, and maybe it was an ordinary day, but it was good enough. And when the critical voices echo in the mind, the self-forgiving person can lovingly sort of shoo them away so they don't take up permanent residence. Because when they take up permanent residence, that's when we get into trouble. We get into a loop of constantly listening to those negative voices and then believing them, and then we beat ourselves up. And so there's no self-compassion, and there's certainly no self-confidence as a result of that. So with the foundation of confidence, it's important to remember that you don't have to do this life alone, that practicing self-compassion to forgive our foibles is crucial. It's imperative. And having the equal courage to rely on others helps to complete that foundation of confidence. So asking for help, saying, I don't know, saying, I wonder how somebody else would do this, or finding a mentor or a teacher is all part of self-compassion. People that are confident did not get there by themselves. People that are successful didn't get there by themselves. We all rely and need other people. So being able to, really ask for the help that you need, get the support you need, will help you build your confidence. And having confidence, you may wonder, well, how does this all relate to sex and sexuality? Well, it does, because when we're confident in ourselves, when we truly belong to ourselves, I believe that that is true love, that that's a love that cannot be taken from us by anybody else. And so sometimes when we're in profound emotional pain, we all expect our beloved to show up for us in a way that feels solid or firm or steadfast. And we need soothing knowledge that the person that we love most in the world will be there, that they're going to be present for us, that they're going to care for us. And there is nothing like that, because it allows us to grow in our own confidence when we know we have a backup. Just like a child has a parent that they know is going to catch them if they fall, not coddle them, not prevent them from standing on their own 2 feet, but really be there with parameters to shore them up. Likewise, we need that in our relationships so that we know that somebody has our back. So let's see, somebody just wrote in, just have one question. I have had this weird, it looks like you've written dream, Ryan, but I don't see the rest of your chat. Also, somebody is writing in to say that they can't hear. So I'm wondering if anybody else is having sound issues, because I have no way of knowing that unless you let us know. Let's see. Okay, so somebody says they can hear. Other people are saying they're hearing fine. All right, so it looks like the sound problem is only one person's having the sound problem. So any questions or thoughts then about this notion of confidence? It's sort of a paradox that confidence is reliant. We rely on other people to build confidence, and yet we want to belong to ourselves. And these paradoxes exist in every aspect of our lives and in the world, certainly in laws of nature. And so how do you experience reliance and self-belonging at the same time? And I'll just share with you that my father passed away recently, and my husband was unbelievably firm and steadfast in standing by my side and propping me up emotionally in a way so that I could fall apart, so that I could grieve appropriately. And that was me belonging to myself and being able to have this experience I needed to have because somebody was energetically holding a space for me to do that. Doing that by myself would have been really challenging because not only, would I be falling apart, but then I'd have to drive a car or make a phone call or figure something out. And it's very, very difficult under duress. And so having somebody have our back is essential for our confidence. So let's see. So Ryan was saying, I've had this wondering about the Hulk, why he got painted green. It's been my dream to become the Hulk one day and sexually be painted in the buff. Okay, so what does that have to do with confidence is what I'm curious about. Maybe it's the confidence to ask somebody to paint you green. And I just want to caution you about that because painting one's skin can be very dangerous. Remember, the skin is the biggest organ in the body and it's how we breathe. Certainly we breathe through our nasal passages in our mouth into our lungs, but the skin has got to be able to breathe. So wrapping yourself in saran wrap is a bad idea. Being painted with certain kind of paints can actually have you landing in the emergency room. So be careful about those sorts of experimentations, maybe portions of your body. So when you say that you're overweight, are you talking about that you lack the confidence to ask somebody to do that for you, or that you lack the confidence to even think about it or talk about it? Someone writes, when it comes to confidence, it's so hard to build it and have self-compassion in the society we're living in, which is based on creating self-doubt and making money out of it. How can we create this notion of confidence in the society we're living in? And we constantly are shown these images that are difficult to achieve. Well, I would say that it's super important to be careful about the data that you let in and the data that you digest on any given day, because you're right, our culture creates self-doubt because we live in a consumer culture. So if you read a fashion magazine or a business magazine of some sort and you feel bad about yourself, they're doing their job because they want you to buy a product, to buy an article of clothing, to buy a car, to buy some service that's going to make you feel better about yourself. And that doesn't allow us a reliance on our own intuition. So I would encourage you to really be careful about how much consumer culture you ingest and to stay strong and focused on being compassionate for yourself and that you are doing the best you can do with the tools that you have, and that you're also working towards self-empowerment, that you're on a path of self-awareness, that you are looking to grow and change and develop. And while you're doing that, you are on the road to becoming more confident. And confidence doesn't happen, just overnight or because you took a class or you read a book. It's a lifelong endeavor. It's sort of like, dyeing a cloth where you dip it in dye and you hang it out to dry and then the cloth fades. And then the next day you dip it in the cloth and you hang it out to dry and the cloth fades. But over time, the cloth becomes steadfast. And I've used this metaphor before because I think it's a really powerful one that has us not giving up hope, that has us recognizing like, okay, I did a good job today, or today was a great day. I accomplished something big. And tomorrow was just kind of an ordinary day. I got the things done that I am meant to do on a day-to-day basis. I didn't really move my life forward very much, or I didn't get to any of my goals, but nothing bad happened. I'm grateful that I'm safe and sound, and that's got to be enough for today. But just hold tight to the notion that you are on the way to something, that you have a dream and you're putting one foot in front of the other. Let's see. It makes sense that somebody writes, Charles, that these are connected even when it seems to be a paradox. We need some kind of yardstick. Maybe at first it is from our parents or others, but we still need to check in over time. And I would say, yes, you want to have a community of concern that you can check in with. If you're a writer, it's good to have a writer's group. If you are an artist of some kind, it's good to be in a class. If you are endeavoring to create a business because you're more entrepreneurial, or you're doing something work related, it's always good to bounce things off of other people so people can give you constructive feedback, and then also say to you, you know what, you're doing a great job, or wow, that was really creative. I wouldn't have thought about that. Because all of that helps us to get the kind of mirroring we need in order to know that we're okay in the world. Human beings need reflection. We need mirroring. We need other people to check in with, because we don't often know. It's just like, when we go shopping, we say, does this look okay? Is this color right for me? Because I don't have great objectivity about this. I can't really see it. So someone says, keeping myself away from consumer culture, being selective of the messages I choose to let in, and building confidence day by day, and acknowledging blessings along the way, and being comfortable with being on the way to something and not necessary to reach somewhere. I would say excellent. That is the key, and that's good for you. And that should be your mantra, or you should put that little paragraph up on your refrigerator, because self-comparison, or comparison to others, is really a trap, and it's very easy to go there. All you have to do is watch a movie who's somebody who's got better abs than you do, or see a magazine, or go hear somebody speak, and the minute we compare ourselves to that person, we're going to collapse. We're going to lose our confidence, as opposed to saying, that's unique, that's interesting, how would I do that differently, or what do I have to say, or what message am I putting forward, and who are the people around me that validate that. Okay, so does anybody have any other questions? I think those are all the questions I see right now. Someone says, I tend to push people away from me. I'm realizing now that I've hurt people very close to me, including my now ex-girlfriend. There's a part of me which is confident, though it's also fueled by narcissism, and another which is full of self-doubt. And I would say that the flip side of narcissistic entitlement is self-doubt. I think I'm getting better at maintaining a balance, but I'm afraid that, for instance, while trying to make amends with my ex-girlfriend means I get her to focus so much on what I've done, which I'm starting to find out, and not so much on her. I understand we are different, but even if I'm able to empathize with what she's feeling, I just can't feel it the same way. So I'm going to break this down a little bit, Dwight. It's good that you realize that you're pushing people away, and that your confidence, if your confidence is fueled by narcissism, it's not true confidence, because narcissism by definition has kind of a bloated sense of self to it. It's about, look at how great I am, and I'm the best, and look at me, and it's all often me, me, me. And there is a fragility in that, and needing to be seen and be the center of attention at all times. There's not a real strength in that. And so that's going to be important work for you to do in your own therapy, because what you're saying is what's really underlying that sometimes is self-doubt. Because when we feel self-doubt, we tend to overcompensate. It's like, I don't feel good about what I'm doing, aren't I great? As opposed to, if I feel good about what I'm doing, I don't talk about whether I'm great or not, because I know that I have this self-satisfaction, that I followed my intuition, my bliss, that I have a sense of self-belonging that doesn't require validation from other people. If validation comes, that's great, but I'm not dependent upon it, because then what can happen is that, and I hear that you're saying that you are maintaining a better balance. And so when it comes to making amends to your girlfriend, I think it's important for you to really think about what effect your behavior has had on her. So it's not about saying, I'm sorry to her, because that can be more about you. I'm so sorry, I was so awful, please tell me I wasn't that bad. What's more important is that you recognize what you did to her, and the effects of what you did to her, and what those effects might have on her. how you've actually harmed her will have you starting to build a capacity for empathy. And when you have more capacity for empathy, you're less likely to be self-centered. All right, thank you for writing that. That was very courageous of you. Um, So confidence in relationship really builds when we make ourselves vulnerable. And that's what you're talking about is, can I be vulnerable enough to receive from other people? Because when we receive, we have this fantastic experience of being loved. And people that are controlling want to give all the time. Give, give, give. It's very easy to give a gift. It's very difficult to take a compliment. But when you receive that compliment, then you're vulnerable. Then you have to say thank you because you've been seen. And that is sort of ironically or paradoxically what builds confidence. Melissa writes, my long-term marriage ended last year. My husband was particularly damaging when he criticized me around the time of intimacy. So I assume you're meaning at the time you were having sex. He would say things about my weight after sex. I now know that he had issues and was taking it out on me, but I have scars and I have those statements in my brain. So this is not peculiar to you, unfortunately, Melissa, that women have a tendency to kind of throw ourselves under the bus. Like, why would you want to have sex with a man who was denigrating you in that way and talking poorly about you? And that is really the question for you to ask, is that you were tolerating the abuse from him when you're having sex with him and afterwards he's making comments about your weight. You know, at what point do you say, I'm not having sex with you anymore? Because my weight is not my problem. That's your problem, obviously. And if I have a problem about it, I'm going to do something about it, but that's for me to decide. So I don't want to blame you for being abused by him, but I want you to hear that there is a piece in that for all of us. There's a lesson in taking responsibility for, why am I putting myself in harm's way over and over again? So now you have this sort of trauma in your head because you don't belong to yourself. His words are in your head and you've taken them to be true. If they are true, then maybe it would be good for you to work on your weight so that you are healthier, so that your body functions better, your heart, your lungs, your joints. So maybe that is a wake-up call to take care of yourself. And by going into action, you start to reclaim that part of yourself. You're no longer a victim. As long as you don't do anything about it, then you remain a victim and you keep hearing those nasty, punitive voices in your head. Now, if you're not overweight, and your weight is just fine, then you really have to work against those voices in his head, because you're giving him way too much power over yourself, and that is stripping your confidence. So again, these can be tenacious negative thoughts that get into our heads that we can't let go of. And you have to ask yourself, what's happening that I'm running these voices? Because typically it has to do with grief, loss, it has to do with pain or fear. And rather than getting in touch with the deeper feelings, we start to run these stories in our head like a rat on a wheel. So I would suggest, and I would invite you to see what you can do to get up underneath those statements and into your feelings and see what you're really feeling about that. And then how do you start to heal those painful feelings? Someone else says, Melissa, I can relate. Setting boundaries and taking responsibility is so important for me, which I'm slowly trying to build for myself. I personally choose those types of partners, emotionally unavailable or abusive, for short-term pleasure, and I'm afraid it's better than to be alone. And so it's not better than to be alone. That's like saying, you know, I'm just going to go to 7-Eleven and eat Skittles for lunch because, you know, sugar is better than nothing. At some point, you're going to make your body sick from eating Skittles for lunch. And so maybe it's better to just wait until you come across a piece of fruit, which would be so much better for your body than eating garbage. So I really, for the women that are listening here today, want to encourage you to not settle for anything less than what you deserve. Short-term pleasure, short-term gain does not help us achieve our dreams and our goals over time. everybody who's ever had anything in their lives has made sacrifices of time, energy, money. Um, it's just the nature of being human. Nothing is just, comes to us easily. Even when we learn to walk, crawling is, a drag on the knees, and babies bump their heads, and learning how to walk can be treacherous because the legs are unstable, and babies fall and hurt themselves and they cry. But all of that starts to build capacity for being in the world. And so when you can say no to men for short-term pleasure, you start to build a capacity of confidence and valuing yourself. No is one of the most powerful things you can say. And then again, when yes, resounding yes, and you'll know it. And I also want to recommend that those of you that struggle with boundaries, is that you take a look at some boundary books out there. If you go to Amazon and type in boundaries, there are a few books that will come up. One of them is an old one by a woman named Anne Catherine, and it's called Boundaries Where You End and I Begin. It's not a big read. It's maybe 100 pages. But for those of you that are partners of sex addicts by chance, I recommend Vicki Tidwell Palmer's book, Beyond Betrayal, which is all about setting boundaries. So learning to set boundaries is a way to build confidence in yourself. So just as we make ourselves vulnerable enough to receive, we also want to call upon our own self-assurance to stand strong for those that we love, even when we don't feel up for the task, even when it's inconvenient to be there for people that we love. When somebody's lost a loved one, or they've lost a job, or they're struggling, or they don't feel well, it's not convenient to drop everything and go to the drugstore and buy your partner cold medicine in the middle of your workday. But it's essential to standing up for and supporting and helping one another. And it makes you feel good about yourself. Recently, I was, just last weekend, Friday night, I was at a conference for certified sex addiction therapists, and we had a panel there of 4 women in recovery from sex and love addiction. And I asked them the question about the thing that really felt like the linchpin for their recovery. And of course, they all mentioned all sorts of therapies and meetings and all of that. But one woman said that giving service was the thing that made her feel the best about herself, that her confidence grew when she could start to give to other people, and she was receiving as a result of that giving, and recognizing that she was lovable, that she was good, that she was worthy, that she had something to offer. So this process of confidence is about receiving, being vulnerable, having friends to rely on, but also giving with an open heart. Don't be stingy, because if you're stingy, you won't feel confident. You'll feel bad about yourself. So the friends and family members we confidently rely on and who rely on us are probably the people that are going to be our best confidants. So you want to choose your confidants well. Don't choose people that are going to stab you in the back, or that are going to create drama, or that you keep wanting to give a second or third or fourth chance to, and it never goes well, because that's on you. If you keep going to the same person over and over and they keep disappointing you, that means that you're choosing poorly. So make sure that you are choosing your confidants, your trusted others, your fair witnesses wisely, so that when they hold your heart, you know it's being taken care of. Because we confide our deepest, darkest, most shameful truths to the people we trust, knowing that they're going to hold them in a safe place, that it's not going to come back around to you, that you're not going to hear it again. That is unsafe, and that's a way that we can start to erode confidence in humanity and start to feel like, wow, I don't trust anybody. But if I don't trust anybody, maybe it's because I'm choosing untrustworthy people. So somebody says, I might have gone too far with the narcissism. He said, I can sincerely acknowledge that I can do good things objectively, connecting with others and doing more writing, which I always wanted to do, and that I can take pride in it on my own, which is great. I'm not accusing you of being narcissistic. Well, look, we all have a healthy narcissism, and we can all go too far with that. So your point helped me to make a broader point. So hold on to yourself. Don't take it personally. And remember that, oh, yeah, I have a little bit of that, like we all do, but that's not all of who I am. And then Dwight goes on to say, and that I can take pride on my own. My concern now is that my ex-partner is trying to focus too much on my problems and doesn't want to talk about hers. Okay, so there's only so much you can do about that. I can get vulnerable and not pressure her now to talk about her problems, which I do think also feed to my need to push her away and myself out of the relationship. Well, that makes sense. If you feel like you are the identified patient, if you're the reason the relationship's not working well, that it's all on you to fix it, that's lopsided, and that's a problem. Maybe she has some narcissistic issues herself, where she cannot see what her part is in things. Because if somebody can't see their part in the relationship, then that is going to have you wanting to push them away, and maybe even get back at that person because you can't tolerate their self-centeredness. So that's a natural reaction, and I would recommend that you consider that that is just not a good relationship for you to be in. And so you say that you don't want to lose yourself under the expectations that she has of you. I will tend to minimize myself in her and the relationship. Yeah, well, I think that's dangerous because it sounds like you're compensating for her deficits to make the relationship work. And that can become what we call codependent, that you're trying to justify her needs and contort yourself into a pretzel to make it okay for her. The problem with that scenario is that you could probably never get it right for her. And if you can never get it right for her, you are going to paint yourself into a very tight corner, and then you're going to be left with feeling bad about yourself, low self-esteem, not unlike the woman who was having sex with her husband who was telling her she was fat. Don't do that to yourself. You perpetrate violence on yourself when you accommodate people's issues like that. So you say both of us are different and we need more respect and empathy for each other. So can I expand a bit in regards to how making ourselves more vulnerable is related to gaining more confidence? Is it related to self-empathy? Well, I think self-compassion is the word that we're using, or the term, not self-empathy. Those are sort of splitting hairs. Typically, when we think of empathy and we think about the brain works, empathy is for others. And compassion is for the self. But when you make yourself vulnerable, for example, if I say to you, Dwight, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, or if I misinterpreted what you were saying earlier about narcissism, I didn't mean to hurt you, and that's my fault that I was talking in broad strokes. I just made myself vulnerable to you. I just said I did something wrong, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm a human being. This is sort of a funny forum because we're not looking at each other face to face. And so in making myself vulnerable, that makes me feel good about myself, as opposed to being arrogant and saying, well, I didn't do anything wrong and you're sensitive, and that's going to make me feel bad about myself. Like I'm not a very good person. So if I think I'm a good person, I need to act like a good person. If you were to take that statement and then twist it around and make me out to be a bad person or a bad therapist, then at some point I don't want to be in conversation with you anymore, because now your issues are distorting the truth of what I'm saying to you. If we were in a long-term relationship and that was going on, I have to ask myself, how many times am I going to get battered around like this, where I feel misunderstood, I make myself vulnerable, I get hurt, or I get kicked in the teeth? Why am I hanging around for this person? I'm devaluing myself. I can blame you, the other person, for being a jerk and then become a victim. Or I can say, I'm not doing this anymore. I care too much about myself. I value myself. You're going to do whatever you're going to do. I can't change you. So I'm out now. I have to leave the relationship. And that's the healthiest thing we can do sometimes, even though I really privilege people fighting for relationships, because I think that's how we grow and learn. But if both parties aren't willing to look at their issues and what their part is in things, then there's no place to go in these relationships. So pay close attention to what's yours and what is the other person's. So I'm having trouble here changing my slides. So I'm going to reach around and try this again. Okay, so one of the strongest antidotes to feeling alone in the world is knowing that there's somebody who values you. And that's why uh, love and relationship is so, so crucial to human beings, that you have somebody that you can fully trust, that you can fully confide in. There's so many studies that show that we live longer as a result of community, that you can literally change your DNA as a result of, or not your DNA, but the way your DNA expresses itself more accurately as a result of having community. So if you grew up in an environment that was isolating or abusive, or you were lonely, even though it's hard for you, the best thing you can do is to make friends, and make close friends. Find people that are trustworthy. If you're not in a 12-step program, which is the place where so many people find trusted others, join a club, get involved in your church or a cause, or a hobby where you're going to meet like-minded people, where you can start to build friendships and love relationships. It is crucial for your confidence, and for your health and well-being. And there's a paradox in that people who enjoy the emotional liberation of self-confidence attained it because they opened themselves up. They made themselves vulnerable. So confidence is not about being impervious. It's not about being defended. It's not about being blustery or arrogant or full of yourself. There's a quietness about it. There's a vulnerability to it that says, I'm going to try things, and if I goof or slip up, I know that there are people around me who love me, that are going to pick me up, and I'm going to say, oh, well, at least I tried. Um, so this person says, the reason I can't stand up for myself and let those people go is my fear of being alone in the long term. Sure, I completely understand that. I need to be comfortable with being by myself and getting to know what I would want if I wasn't seeking a relationship or partner. I spend so much time trying to find partners and make it happen. And so I would turn you to, I'm assuming you're female because you were relating to one of the females. I would turn you towards making good female friends. Learning to be with women, because oftentimes women that struggle with the issue that you're talking about didn't get what they needed from other women, namely their mothers, that they have what we call mother hunger, a longing for a sense of self that mothers are meant to give their daughters. And then we as women go looking for it from men. And we start compromising ourselves and having sex with men because we think that's where we're going to get the love we need, when really it's an inside job. And so taking a year off and saying, for 1 year, I'm not going to even look at another guy. I'm going to get so involved with myself in therapy, and probably group therapy if you can manage both. And if it's a woman's group, even better. I'm going to take up hobbies. I'm going to learn to do things that interest me and try things so I can start to learn who I am and really take care of myself. These are habits that if we don't learn in childhood, we have to learn in our early adulthood. Otherwise, this is going to be a real struggle for you when you become, in your 40s, 50s, and later. So do it while you're young enough to do it, please. Paul says, along these lines, how does it work when one partner, A, has resentments over the partner's B's failings? Can the partner B take away the resentments of partner A through an amends process, or must partner A make amends for their own resentments? Well, partner B has to make amends. And keep in mind that amends are living, breathing actions. Amends are not a one and done, I'm sorry, but they're a change of behavior. They're a change where every day you are making restitution by showing up, by calling, by being on time, by doing what you say you're going to do, by having empathy for how you hurt partner A. What did you do to that person? How did you erode their confidence because of maybe your secrets or lies or whatever behavior you engaged in that betrayed their confidence? So partner B has to make a living amends for their feelings, for their failings. And partner A has to move towards forgiveness if partner B is making a concerted effort to right their wrongs. If they don't, there's no way that partner B can make those resentments go away. You can only do so much. And as long as you're doing the best you can, as long as you're communicating that you're doing the best you can, as long as you are willing to ask, what more can I do for you? How can I help you get through this and get past your hurt? That's all you can do. Blair says, I started to pledge loyalty to a chosen list of values and energies, not the people that those qualities present, though. Took a while, but what started showing up has been pretty cool, so worth it. Around 8 billion people on the planet, no need to compromise my values to accommodate ugly spirits. Plenty of supply out there, going through a period of few friends, with self-love because I said no to all the bad and made room for the good, which is great, Blair. Nice to hear from you. So yes, I mean, that's a perfect example of I'm going to make it small and special. I'm going to make it small and quality as opposed to broad and what I call junk food. So really dialing it down to saying, what is true for me? How this soul expresses itself, what this soul needs, the kind of people I like to be around, without apologies or making excuses or what other people think of my friends, but what I really need. Zarina says, I have a problem breaking up with a person, even if this is not the person I want to spend my life with. I almost feel like I have a Stockholm syndrome attached to it. It's just so painful to break up. Well, that is probably a deeper seated issue for you because that sounds like it's really in your body. So that's both your psychology and your biology at play there. And I think for you, in a way, you know, in the language of love addiction, we would talk about withdrawal, that the only way for you to find out and to change what this underlying mechanism is to dive deep into that pain, because that pain has information in it. There's data in that. And as long as you have your finger in the dam, you'll never find out what that information is. And then you'll lead a life where you are just sort of quietly suffering all the time because it's more painful for you, or because you're living with this person because you can't leave. And this is a real dilemma. You have to pick your pain. It's either the pain of staying in a relationship that has you unhappy for the rest of your life, or the pain that's underneath that that's going to have you growing and changing. So that is ultimately up to you. All right. So let's see, one more thought I have. So the daily sex acts from Mirror of Intimacy today are the question of whom do you rely on most in your life? Who is the person you are most reliant upon? We can be reliant on ourselves and belong to our own selves, which is excellent. But again, that paradox in human beings is one of the greatest paradoxes there are, where we are gregarious creatures. We rely on attachment to other human beings. We don't flourish without attachment to others. Love, connection, affection, touch, validation, all of that. And simultaneously, we are highly autonomous creatures. We really need our space. So we have to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and have people around us who take care of us and who love us. So it's a both and situation. It's not either or. And do you trust those people implicitly? Meaning you don't even have to think about it. You know that they have your back. If you have one person in your life, that's great like that. You don't have to have 5. If you have 2 or 3, excellent. But one person that you know will go to the mat for you is essential to your well-being. And if you don't trust that person, why are you relying on that person? That's another question to ask yourself. Stop relying on them. Don't use somebody who's going to hurt you to get your needs met, because that keeps you in a vicious loop of codependence. It erodes your self-esteem and your self-confidence, and it keeps you in a place of being a victim. So when you step out of being a victim and you turn to being a victor, that's when you become confident. That's when you become in charge of your own love and you living in your own love. And that's when you start to feel more solid and more integrated. And that's ultimately what mental health is. So any other thoughts or questions about this topic? So if you're in a relationship and you don't feel like your partner can be steadfast for you in times of need, then talk to them about it. Express your concerns, and not in a blaming, shaming way, like you're never there for me, but in a way that you would want to hear that. In a way that says, I noticed something recently that whenever I talk to my mother and I get off the phone and I feel sad, I feel like you ignore me or you walk away. And what I really need from you is a hug, or I need you to tell me it's going to be okay. I don't need you to fix or change it. I know it's a difficult situation, but I really need you to be here for me, because we're not mind readers. We don't know what our partners do and don't need any more than they know what we need. So be bold, take risks, make yourself vulnerable, ask for what you want and need. And if your partner can't deliver it, then you need to take stock of that and ask yourself, can I really live with this? So find out what's missing so you can both feel more secure, and so that you can make some difficult decisions if you have to, either to recognize that you're never going to get this from your partner and you have to live with it, or that you can't be with this person because they're never going to be able to help you heal in the way that you want to heal. And ask yourself also, how trustworthy of a confidant are you? Do you keep secrets or do you gossip? And if you do that, what keeps you from keeping your word? Because this is really aligns with the adage of what goes around comes around. If somebody can confide in you and you can hold their confidence, I find that that's one of the greatest gifts we can give people, where they know that there's a safe place to go, that they can say what they need to say, and it's not going to leak out or get back to anybody else. And if you can't do that, ask yourself, what is it about me that has me that makes me such an unsafe person that I've got to go run tell somebody about that? And if you know that you can't keep a secret, then you need to tell your friends, please don't confide in me. I'm terrible about keeping a secret. I'm working on that. But if you don't want anybody to know, just don't tell me those things. And that's about being responsible and about being a good friend, both to yourself and to the other person, because you don't want a reputation of being somebody that is untrustworthy, because you will lose friends quickly in that way. All right. Let's see. Dwight says, regarding the things I do, I think that therapy is helping, and I also being open about them. Would you say that it's possible to channel my side that hurts others creatively in writing, for example? Yeah, of course. I think the creative arts is a fantastic way to sublimate and to channel and to put our issues. So if you're a writer, you could write a character that is sympathetic, that your readers like, but also has all of your faults and foibles, and that way you can see them live and direct. And maybe through the arc of the story, he starts to correct some of those things. So I would say yes. I think using writing, using painting, drawing, any kind of creative art is a great way to help us work out our issues in constructive ways so that they're not hurting other people. All right, so I want to remind you, as always, to live in your own loving, and that Mirror of Intimacy is available on Amazon.com. If ever you want to buy somebody a gift or write us a review, we love hearing from you. So I hope you go confidently in the direction of your dreams, as Thoreau said, and that you have a beautiful rest of the month of May, or June, as it were. No, I guess we're still in May, or we just started May. And that I look forward to seeing you when I see you next in June. All right, take care. Be well.